Siskel and Ebert.
This is the CBS Sunday Night News. I'm Richard Schlesinger, sitting in tonight for Bill Plant. Good evening. The main players are in the wings, and the world is waiting for this week's New York meeting between President Reagan, President-elect Bush, and Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev. Is it a summit? That's the debate, as Linda Tyra reports.
All eyes will be on Governor's Island this week when President Reagan, Vice President Bush, and Soviet leader Gorbachev converge on the site for a brief meeting over lunch. Unlike the 4 previous meetings between Mr. Reagan and Mr. Gorbachev, the White House insists this will not be a summit.
I think despite all the protests, any meeting between the President and the General Secretary is in fact a summit. And they're already beginning to talk about subjects that would normally be included in a summit.
Among the areas to be discussed, human rights, Soviet troop withdrawal from Afghanistan, bilateral topics such as grain sales and arms control. The White House is emphasizing the continuity of U.S.-Soviet relations as George Bush prepares to take over the presidency. But some conservatives warn the president-elect must be on his toes and make no major moves during this meeting.
I hope that they're just going to size each other up and review the bidding and then come back home and think about it.
Aside from the serious discussions, the meeting will have some public relations benefits for all parties. Mr. Gorbachev and Mr. Bush hoping to turn the spotlight away from pressing economic problems in both countries. And Ronald Reagan getting another chance to bask in the glow of international attention. Linda Tyra, CBS News, the White House.
The Soviets have already started putting their spin on what is and is not likely to come out of this week's meeting. Jonathan Sanders is keeping an eye on the Kremlin.
For Mikhail Gorbachev, all the world is a stage. He leaves Moscow to be a world player when he speaks to the United Nations on Wednesday. In the past year, he's completely reversed Soviet UN policy. The Soviets are paying their dues and using the UN to mediate disputes. One result? A negotiated end to the war in Afghanistan. Gorbachev is likely to propose some new UN role to stop the Afghan bloodbath, since Soviet troop withdrawals are now halted 10 weeks before the deadline, and experts say civil war is likely. Gorbachev will also come from Red Square to Times Square to push for better relations with the U.S. His top concern? More arms control treaties. Gorbachev's trip has important purposes domestically, too. His country's moving through a difficult and disruptive transition period of its own. The economy's sputtering, there's ethnic unrest. So in meeting with world leaders, he needs to convince Soviets he's more than a showman. He's an indispensable one as well. Jonathan Sanders, CBS News, Moscow.
Well, for President-elect Bush, the upcoming meeting with Gorbachev might just come as a relief from what he was dealing with this weekend. Money, how to spend less of it, more to the point, how not to raise taxes. Mark Phillips reports.
It was a weekend of tossing around policy issues along with the horseshoes for President-elect George Bush. Much of the coming week will be occupied with Mikhail Gorbachev's visit to New York. But at a late afternoon meeting with his top advisors, including Budget Director-designate Richard Darman and Treasury Secretary Nicholas Brady, Mr. Bush grappled with the major outstanding legacy of the Reagan years, the massive budget deficit. Advice is coming from all quarters.
George Bush committed himself not to raise taxes. He needs Congress telling him, particularly the Democrats in Congress, telling him he must, so that he can go back to the American people and say, I can't help it.
But the Democrats in Congress are unwilling to play that game. They're waiting for Mr. Bush to tell them how he intends to lower the deficit.
We look forward to receiving his proposals. When we receive them, then, and only then, we'll be prepared to talk about them.
But the Democrats caution the Reagan administration became adept at creating new taxes and calling them something else, revenue enhancers, or loophole closers, or base broadeners. The economists say the choice is clear and unavoidable. The deficit must be reduced, either by drastically cutting programs or by creating new taxes, whatever they're called. Mark Phillips, CBS News, Washington.
And still ahead on the CBS Sunday Night News, New York braces for Eastern blocked traffic. military base last week gave up tonight. Troops loyal to President Alfonsine had surrounded the rebels, who were demanding a pay raise and amnesty for Army officers jailed for human rights abuses. 4 people reportedly were killed during the uprising. This was presidential election day in Venezuela. The results tonight show that former President Carlos Andrés Pérez has defeated his conservative rival. Pérez promised to pull the oil-producing nation out of its worst economic crisis in decades. In Poland, where the economy is also struggling, this was a day for both celebration and demonstration for the country's coal miners. Bert Quint has our report.
It was the same old demand, legalize solidarity. But it wasn't the shipyard workers of Gdansk, but the miners of Silesia in southern Poland. Today was their day, the day of St. Barbara, patron of Poland's miners. Not all of them had the day off. With the high prices brought by Poland's sorely needed but badly implemented economic reform, many of these comparatively highly paid miners have to work 7 days a week to get by. Despite the suspicion of the miners, Poland's new prime minister is vowing to press ahead with new reforms. He's starting not with heavy industry, but with the farmers who make up 40% of the population. Next month, they'll be able to sell their produce to anybody, not just to the government, and at whatever price the market will bear. And the new year promises to bring even more sweeping changes to encourage new enterprises. The idea, revolutionary as it sounds in the socialist world, is to let anyone, Pole or foreigner, set up a private business in a matter of weeks, with the same rights and taxes as a state enterprise. It sounds fine, these miners say, but without solidarity, economic reform doesn't stand a chance. Bert Quint, CBS News, Jastrzębie, Poland.
In Tokyo, a Monday morning train collision has killed 2 people and injured more than 85. One crowded commuter train plowed into the rear of another, which was stopped in a station.
Believe it or not, these 3 prunes have more fiber than this entire bowl of bran flakes. Prunes, the high-fiber fruit.
Nearly 1/3 of the smoke detectors in American homes are not working because of dead or missing batteries. In a fire, they'd be worthless. That's why First Alert created the new light test smoke detector. No smoke detector you can buy is easier to test. You don't even have to stand up. Just wave a flashlight at the gold button, and you know it's working. The new light test smoke detector. Only First Alert gives you this extra protection.
This holiday, save an arm and a leg with Pam. Pam No-Stick Cooking Spray makes baking a whole lot easier. Pam, because how you cook is as important as what you cook.
The space shuttle is circling the Earth every 90 minutes on its hush-hush military mission. We're waiting for official word now on when it's coming home, and Bruce Hall is at mission control.
Under a shroud of secrecy, the 5-man all-military crew aboard Atlantis completed its 3rd day of work in space. The Air Force is maintaining its strict code of silence on all aspects of the flight. However, sources have indicated the super-secret spy satellite La Crosse has now been successfully checked out and deployed. However, no independent tracking stations have picked up signals from the huge satellite. This is a very complex mission, including the testing of a number of new items for the military. The flight is also coordinated with troop and naval maneuvers on the ground and at sea. For the Pentagon, this is the most important shuttle mission to date. The Air Force will break its code of silence 24 hours before the shuttle lands on runway 17 at Edwards Air Force Base in the California desert. Since there has been no word, the earliest the shuttle can return is Tuesday morning. Bruce Hall, CBS News, Johnson Space Center.
Actor Gary Busey was critically injured today in a motorcycle accident in Culver City, California. Busey, who is 44, won an Oscar nomination for the title role in the Buddy Holly story.
If you thought you had to give up comfort to get a close shave, Norelco says, think again. Their revolutionary shaving system shaves skin close in a way that's incredibly comfortable. As the hair enters the chamber, The patented lift and cut system lifts each hair and holds it a split second before a blade cuts it, so it's possible to shave skin close without the blades even touching the skin. The lift and cut shaving system from Norelco. We made close comfortable.
In the village of Upper Nyack, the firemen fight fires with ladders and hoses. And a Murata fax machine. It's used to receive floor plans and detailed drawings of buildings so they can plan how to attack the fire before they get to the fire. Murata fax machines.
Even though it's still about 3 days away, New Yorkers are already calling this December 7th a day of infamy. When Soviet General Secretary Gorbachev and his wife Raisa come to town, traffic, which is normally snarled here, is expected to be even worse. Make that much worse. When the Russians land, the first casualties are likely to be the already short tempers of New Yorkers.
If you're a motorist, it is a nightmare next week. If you're a pedestrian, it's going to be very exciting.
Gorbachev is expected to go to the World Trade Center, Trump Tower, and Bloomingdale's, among other places. He travels in a 40-car motorcade and presumably doesn't like stoplights any more than the rest of us, which means thousands of New York drivers will have to wait for the Gorbachevs.
We're going to try to avoid what people have already been calling Gorby-lock in Midtown Manhattan.
Oh, it's going to tie up everything just like the president does when he comes.
Well, actually, it'll be worse, say the experts. Wednesday is matinee day, and this is the Christmas season, enough to crush the Big Apple, even without a visiting dignitary. But New York is a city where entrepreneurs see profit where others see only misfortune. Consider the squeegee people who see to it that windshields are clean.
Man, don't let me see his no more.
Why?
I'll throw so much soap on there he won't see.
Why?
Why? Just to give him the New York treatment, break him in.
Well, the bottom line is, while the Gorbachevs leave gridlock in their way as they see New York, a lot of New Yorkers here will be seeing only red. And that's the CBS Sunday Night News, wishing you green lights and an open road. I'm Richard Schlesinger. Good night.
Assignment Gorbachev. From the United Nations to Communist Cuba to a superpower meeting. Watch CBS News for complete coverage beginning Tuesday.
This is CBS.
Every year, generous Houstonians share